How I Met Your Mother is full of moments that hit way harder than any sitcom should, from Marshall completely breaking down after losing his dad, to Ted sitting alone in a bar realizing his entire friend group moved on without him. I'll be going over the darkest episodes in How I Met Your Mother, starting with one of the most brutal. Before How I Met Your Mother ever killed anyone or made you cry, it was already doing something most sitcoms won't do. It was letting its main character be a genuinely terrible person, and the show didn't flinch. Not once. It starts with one of the ugliest decisions Ted ever made. In Season 1, Episode 18, Nothing Good Happens After 2 a.m., Robin has had one of the loneliest, most humiliating days of her life. She calls Ted late at night, and Ted, who has a girlfriend, Victoria, who he knows is probably about to break up with him, goes to Robin's apartment. He lies. He tells Robin he and Victoria already broke up. He kisses her. And then he sits in Robin's bathroom, phone in hand, debating whether to actually end things with Victoria, while standing in another woman's apartment. That's not a sitcom goof. That's a real moral failure, and the show treats it like one. Then Season 3 makes it worse. In No Tomorrow, Ted goes on a St. Patrick's Day bender with Barney and becomes the worst version of himself. He abandons a date, charges drinks to someone else's tab, hits on a married woman, just completely falls apart as a person. And here's the part that makes it dark. Future Ted reveals that the mother, Tracy, was at that exact same party. She was right there. And he says she would not have liked him that night. Think about that. His future wife was in the same room, and she would have been disgusted by him. That's not romantic. That's a warning. And while Ted's making bad decisions, the show drops one of the earliest real gut punches on someone else entirely. In the Season 1 finale, the same night Ted finally gets Robin, Lily breaks off her engagement to Marshall and leaves for San Francisco. Ted gets his dream. Marshall loses his. Same night, same apartment. The show doesn't pick one feeling over the other. It just lets both sit there. Then, in Season 2, Marshall spirals. He thinks Lily's been using her credit card somewhere, so he drives around trying to find her. Turns out the card was stolen. Even his last connection to her was fake. And Season 4 finishes the early pattern. Stella leaves Ted at the altar. Not days before, not with a phone call. She just doesn't show up. Ted's standing there in his suit, and she's gone. Not long after, Ted runs into Stella again. She's already back with Tony, already playing house with her daughter, like the wedding never happened. Ted imagines the confrontation, plays the whole scene out in his head, and then he decides it's not worth it. He just walks away, which honestly might be worse than yelling, because it means he's already learning how to swallow his pain and keep moving. And that becomes Ted's entire pattern for the rest of the show. These episodes showed the cracks, but up to this point, nobody in the group had actually been broken. That changes next, because the next episode on this list has one of the most devastating final 30 seconds in TV history. Most people still can't rewatch it. There's a moment in Season 6 that permanently changes the tone of this show. Before this episode, the show had never centered a major death inside the core group. After it, grief never fully leaves. And the way they set it up is what makes it so brutal. Season 6, Episode 13 is called Bad News. The entire episode is a comedy. Marshall and Lily are trying to get pregnant. They're doing fertility tests. There's a running joke with a countdown hidden in the background. Marshall gets the results. His numbers are great. He's relieved. He's happy. Lily walks up to him outside the bar, and she tells him his dad died of a heart attack. That's it. No build-up. No dramatic music leading into it. 1 second he's celebrating, and the next second his whole world collapses. The countdown in the background was counting down to the worst moment of his life, and nobody noticed until it was too late. The next episode, Last Words, follows Marshall through the funeral. And the thing eating him alive isn't just the grief. It's that he thinks his dad's last words to him were completely meaningless. A throwaway joke about renting Crocodile Dundee 3. That's it. That's supposed to be the final thing his dad ever said to him. Marshall is tormented by the idea that his last real conversation with his father meant nothing. But then he finds one more voicemail. At first it sounds like a pocket dial, just static. Then Marvin Sr.'s voice comes through. He says he loves Marshall, that he had a great day with him. That's how it ends. Not with a dramatic monologue or some grand revelation, just a dad saying he loves his son, and it breaks you because that's the thing Marshall was terrified he'd never get. Proof that his dad's last thought about him was a good one. The show also does something really smart in that episode. It uses every other character's father relationships as a mirror. Robin remembers a birthday call from her dad where he called her a huge disappointment. Lily's last real conversation with Mickey was about jail and money. Barney says he won't have to go through what Marshall's going through because he doesn't even know his father, which sounds like a defense mechanism, because it is. And the show pays that off later in a big way. And the show doesn't let the grief stay with one character. In Tailgate, Marshall visits his dad's grave on New Year's Day to keep their tradition going. Other mourners start showing up. And in a separate storyline, Mickey Aldrin, Lily's deadbeat dad, who she basically wrote off, drives overnight after hearing she's pregnant. Lily hugs him and cries. Marshall's dad dying didn't just break Marshall. It cracked open every other character's worst wound, and most of them had been hiding it for years. Because what happens next isn't about death. It's about the wounds that were already there, and how Marshall losing his dad forced everyone to look at them. And one of those wounds involves a scene where Robin narrates to her future children for an entire episode, except by the end, you find out those children don't exist. And they never will. After Marshall's dad dies, the show stops pretending its characters are okay. And the darkest stuff isn't the big dramatic moments. It's the quiet ones, the ones where someone realizes something about themselves that can't be undone. And nobody gets hit harder by this than Robin. In Season 7, Symphony of Illumination, the episode opens with Robin apparently narrating to her future kids. She's telling them a story, just like future Ted always does. You spend the whole episode thinking she's pregnant. Then the show pulls the rug out. Robin isn't pregnant. She can't have children. And the kids she was talking to, they don't exist. They were imagined. She doesn't tell anyone right away. Ted doesn't push her to explain. He just puts up Christmas lights outside her window. And Robin sits there and cries. A few episodes later, in the drunk train, Kevin proposes to her. Robin tells him she can't have kids. Kevin says that's fine, they could adopt. But Robin clarifies. It's not that she can't. She also doesn't want to. Kevin leaves. She goes up to the roof and breaks down. Ted finds her and says he loves her. It goes absolutely nowhere. And while Robin is dealing with that, Barney's going through his own reckoning. In Legend Daddy, he finally meets Jerry, his real dad, his biological father, and he discovers Jerry has a completely normal suburban life. A wife, a son, a basketball hoop in the driveway, all the boring dad stuff Barney never got. And Barney just breaks. Because if Jerry could be that dad for someone else's kid, why couldn't he be that dad for Barney? Marshall, who just lost the greatest dad in the world, tells Barney not to waste the chance to know his. That scene is devastating because Marshall would give anything to have what Barney is throwing away. Marshall just buried the best dad he ever knew. And here's Barney, sitting across from a living, breathing father who wants to try. And Barney almost walks away from it out of spite. The grief from one storyline forces the truth out of another. That's how this show works. Nothing is isolated. Everything bleeds into everything else. And the Robin father wound goes back further. In Season 4, Happily Ever After, flashbacks show Robin's father raised her as the son he wanted, taught her to hunt, fish, smoke cigars, called her by a boy's name. Her emotional armor didn't come from nowhere. Her dad built it. And then there's Tick, Tick, Tick. Barney and Robin cheat on Nora and Kevin. Barney does the honest thing and breaks up with Nora. Robin doesn't. She stays with Kevin. Barney goes back to the apartment where he set up this whole romantic surprise for Robin. Candles, rose petals, the works. And when Robin walks in with Kevin, Barney doesn't say a word. He just starts quietly taking it all down. These episodes aren't loud, they don't have death scenes, but they're the ones that change who these people are. And here's the thing, while everyone was dealing with their own stuff, one character was quietly falling apart, and nobody in the group even noticed. There's one episode that proves it, an episode where Ted spends the whole runtime hanging out with his friends, having a great time, until the last few minutes when you realize none of it was real. Here's something most people miss about this show. Ted isn't just unlucky in love. By Season 8, he is genuinely isolated. His best friends are married with kids. The woman he loves is marrying someone else. And the show keeps putting him in rooms full of people where he's the only one who's actually there. And the episode that proves this might be the most heartbreaking 22 minutes of television ever made. Season 8, Episode 20, The Time Travelers. Ted sits at McLaren's debating whether to go to robots versus wrestlers alone. He imagines future versions of himself and Barney arguing with him about it. They joke around, they go back and forth, it feels like a real hangout. Then the show pulls the rug. None of it happened. His friends were all busy. Marshall and Lily were upstairs with Marvin. Barney was with Robin. Ted was sitting alone the entire time, arguing with himself about whether to go to a show by himself. Then future Ted says if he could relive that night, he wouldn't go to the show. He'd run to Tracy's apartment 45 days before they were supposed to meet, knock on her door, and tell her he wants those extra 45 days with her. He'd introduce himself, he'd say hi. He'd say he wants those extra 45 days, because every day matters when you know how the story ends. On its own, that's sad, but when you learn how the show ends, it's so much worse. He's not being romantic, he's not being a hopeless dreamer, he's begging for time with someone he's already lost. And the whole episode you thought was a fun time travel gag was actually showing you a man who was already disappearing from his own life, and the loneliness doesn't stop there. In No Pressure, Ted tells Robin he loves her. Robin says she doesn't love him back. Marshall tells Robin she needs to move out because Ted is lying about being fine. Future Ted says for the first time in years, no part of him is holding on to the dream of being with Robin. The show even puts yellow umbrellas in the frame. But the finale complicates that closure. Ted does move forward. He meets Tracy, he loves her, he builds a life. But the Robin thread was never as finished as he wanted to believe. After Barney and Robin get engaged in the final page of the next episode, Band or DJ, shows everyone celebrating. Everyone except one person. Future Ted reveals someone wasn't happy. Lily figures out that Ted is hurting and hiding it behind being supportive. Then, in the final stretch of Season 8, Robin is searching for the locket she buried as a kid. The one connected to her childhood fantasy about her wedding day. Her dad bails on her. Barney doesn't get why it matters, but Ted does. Because Ted always understood Robin in a way nobody else could. He finishes building the house he's been working on, puts it up for sale, and decides to move to Chicago. Lily realizes it's not about the job. He's leaving because Robin is marrying someone else, and he's still chasing down her locket, one last attempt to save her wedding fantasy, even though it's tearing him apart. Everything I just told you is painful on its own. But here's what makes it devastating. The finale takes every single one of these moments and makes them worse. Because it reveals something about why Ted is telling this story in the first place. And there's a scene in Season 9 where Tracy asks one simple question, and Ted can't answer it. He just starts crying. When you understand why, you will never watch this show the same way again. Everything I've covered so far, the grief, the loneliness, the father wounds, Ted sitting alone at a bar, all of it gets worse when you learn one thing. The entire show is being narrated by a man whose wife is already dead. And by the finale, his own kids call out what the audience is forced to reconsider. Maybe this story was never only about Tracy, and the show didn't just drop this on you in the finale, it was hiding it in plain sight. Season 9, Episode 16, How Your Mother Met Me. The show finally tells Tracy's side of the story. On her 21st birthday, the same exact night Ted meets Robin at McLaren's, Tracy gets a phone call. Her boyfriend, Max, died. On her birthday, she opens his gift after the funeral. It's a ukulele. She grieves for years, doesn't date, doesn't move on, and slowly, painfully, she starts living again. Her story mirrors Ted's. They were both walking around the same city, grieving, waiting for something they didn't even know they were looking for. They just didn't know they were headed toward each other. And the fact that the show waited until deep into the final season to tell you all of this makes it so much heavier. You spent 9 seasons watching Ted's search. Tracy had her own, and hers started with a funeral. Then Season 9, Episode 19. Vesuvius. Ted and Tracy are sitting together in the Farhampton Inn. It's 2024. They've been married for years. They've told each other every story. Tracy makes a casual comment. She says, "What kind of mother would miss her daughter's wedding?" Ted goes completely silent. His eyes fill up. He can't respond. The show never explains why, not in that episode. But the finale confirms it. Tracy is sick, and she dies that year. She will miss her daughter's wedding, and Ted already knows it. Then the finale hits, and it doesn't hold back. Barney and Robin get divorced by 2016. Robin says the group isn't what it used to be. Barney goes back to his old habits until he has a daughter, Ellie, and she becomes the person who finally changes him. Ted marries Tracy in 2020. They have 2 kids. Tracy gets sick. She dies in 2024. And in 2030, Ted finishes telling the story. His kids look at him and say something that forces you to rethink the entire series. They tell him this story was never just about how he met their mom. It was about Robin. They give him their blessing to go after her. And Ted shows up at Robin's apartment with the blue French horn, the same gesture from the very first episode. This is why every section you just watched matters. Marshall's dad dying wasn't just a sad episode. It set off a chain reaction that forced every character to face their deepest wound. Robin's infertility wasn't a standalone arc. It shaped how she saw relationships, family, and commitment, and her marriage to Barney ultimately collapsed because their lives stopped fitting together. Ted's loneliness wasn't bad luck. It was a preview of what his life would look like after Tracy died. And the 45 days speech from the time travelers? That wasn't Ted being a hopeless romantic. That was a widower wishing he could get back time with the woman he lost. The whole show was a grief story disguised as a comedy. Future Ted wasn't just telling his kids how he met their mother. He was asking permission to move on. That's what makes these the darkest episodes. Not because they're sad, because they were hiding in a show that made you laugh while it was slowly breaking your heart.